You just went straight up to live. Okay, well, here's me in the corner of the screen. We need to remember. It'll never work unless you put the... Here we go. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to all the geeks out there. Welcome to another Geek-Inspired Podcast on a Monday evening for you guys.
We're early this time.
Yeah, we're early. The sun is still out our side only because, well, summer's here. The sun goes down at 11 anyway. But anyway, we'd like to welcome a special guest, Les Allen, on our right-hand side. Below us, our other host, Chunzi. And it's all different for you guys watching us on YouTube, but you'll get it. You'll understand. Welcome, Les. How are you today?
I am in dire need of a haircut. My hair has not been this long for at least...
Didn't get that last word, sorry?
For at least 20 years, it has not...
20 years.
I did... actually, no, there might be a question that might... I'll address the hair to later should the question come up. Otherwise, I am very good. We're the household safe and well. We are locked down, but we are doing okay.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear.
We haven't resorted to cannibalism yet. We're all good.
I don't think you guys can resort to alcoholism, though.
Well, alcohol. We do have a very, very stocked bar, but I did say cannibalism. Rather than alcoholism.
Cannibalism.
Yeah, Les seems to be like cutting out every now and then, so like letters on the same. Yeah.
No, you
I
just
apologize.
and assumed that it was alcoholism.
Well, I mean, you know, the shoe fits, right?
That's where Zof's head is always.
Very much so.
Got to get his VAT 69 in.
Always there. He's like, some credit there. Anyway, let me just put that away. Okay, so we're live on stream. You need to ask questions instead of posting things.
I'm changing the first question, please. I'm changing the.
Well, why doesn't Les Allen give us a bit of a rundown about who he is and what he does in our geek culture space?
Yes.
Off to you.
Anytime.
Yeah.
I don't think you can hear us.
You can't hear us anymore.
Yeah, it's Mike. It's a little shaky. You guys paused for quite some. I don't know if you were talking about.
We were talking about you.
Yes, we were talking about you.
We were talking about you.
But
Well,
I think I know
we
what the
asked
problem
you what you do in the geek culture space. What is it you do?
All right, geek culture space. Sorry, I got the last bit of that. I think what I might try and do is jump out on my connection, back in it.
Yeah, sure.
You can try
Maybe
that.
that's a good idea.
You can try that.
Let me jump out. Let me jump back in.
Sure.
I blame Zip.
But don't blame me. It's not my fault.
You said that we should keep technical difficulties.
Well, I mean, it
So
wouldn't
the
be a
universe
Geek-Inspired
then
podcast
kept-
without technical difficulties. would
There
it?
is, and those are the good days. This is now not a good day.
Starting on time, though.
We
That's a
did
first.
manage to start on
Started
time. Yeah. We did manage to
I
start
mean,
on
have
time.
you ever? We actually started on time.
Anybody in the Twitch chat there?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Well, there's one person watching, but I think that's me.
Yeah, I have a sneaky suspicion it's Keza as well.
Give me your phone.
No.
I actually need your phone.
Well, I must improve my best. I'm just deleting Shane.
Hiding all your shame.
No, I was just closing all of the stupid notifications that I get. Alright, so as boring as this may seem, we are the SA Geeks. This is Geek-Inspired. This is a Geek-Inspired podcast, and on our right-hand side is Geekoscopy, who happens to be the
How are you?
inventor of the Geek-Inspired Podcast.
Indeed.
We are just random hosts that he thought would look good for the screen. Yeah.
Look good.
Let's try. You guys got?
We can hear you, yeah?
Excellent. All right, so I've just switched my connect. Sorry. Hopefully this should be okay.
He looks like a Minecraft character.
No, it's Les Allen from Minecraft.
I have minimal experience.
That's perfectly fine. We
That's
don't
fine.
mind.
Here, that's
It's
all that
fine. It
matters.
happens.
People
Yeah.
can still see who you are.
People can see you, people can hear you, that's all that matters.
Excellent.
Even if it's blurry Liz, we can still see Liz.
Yes.
So I apologize. I might have the first question.
No. Well, it's not your fault. Technical difficulties happen. But we did ask you to give us a rundown about who you are and what you do in our geek culture space.
Oh, lowly humble. I work in the South African space. Icon, comics and games convention.
He's cutting in and out.
I run.
Yeah.
Cutting out very heavily. I think it's the Discord. It might be. Your push to talk is.
I am not. No, I'm choosing the audio. Switch that.
How good is your microphone?
Maybe your sensitivity is a bit too high.
Microphone's normally pretty good. Yeah, a microphone's normally pretty good. Let me move that audio sensitivity down.
Yeah,
Is that
maybe the
any better?
sensitivity. Well, you'll have to speak for us to check.
Sorry. Okay, so I've dropped it. I've dropped the sensitivity quite a bit.
Okay, you're coming through straight now. It probably was the sensitivity.
Straight now,
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, there we go.
Live tech
Technical
support on
difficulties
Discord.
work.
Discord. If it's not Twitch, it's Discord. It's not.
It's always something. It's always
OBS.
something.
It's not OBS. It's something else.
Always something different.
And the thing is, it was working relatively fine before, and then all of a sudden, like on live. It was... But yes, Les, continue. Tell us about yourself.
All right. So my geek involvements in South Africa are around Icon Comics and Games Convention predominantly. I have been a co-director of Icon since 2015. Also run a company called GeekXP. GeekXP has become more of an industry consulting company, working with other companies who are trying to touch on geek audiences and how to deal with them, how to run events with them. I wear multiple hats. I'm also the head of business development for a platform called Discomics. Discomics is a sub-branch of the Discop event, Discop being a trade show where we look at content selling, buying and selling. So it's the largest TV content buying and selling platform across the continent. And my role with Discomics is to help bring the pop culture aspect, that knowledge and understanding to Discop, to all the people who are looking to buy and sell content, and help them understand the opportunities as far as geek content is concerned in that space. So I wear multiple hats in the geek space.
I mean, that sounds really interesting on that point. Like, what are some of the challenges that you are faced with trying to, sell this niche to people who might not necessarily understand? And how do you go about convincing them?
It's occasionally not easy, as a lot of geeks can understand when they're trying to share their passion or share their interest with somebody who doesn't really understand the culture, doesn't really understand the space. So part of the biggest challenge is to find a framework for understanding. And at the very least, it's, if you don't understand it, it doesn't matter because it's here. You just need to accept that it's here and accept that the numbers are there, accept that the reach is there, and accept that the potential is there. But generally, it's trying to find a relatable framework I'm a longtime comics fan. I grew up on X-Men. I had a massive X-Men collection. And when people would say, "Well, why are you reading comics? It's a childish pastime." You try to relate what you're seeing in this comics to something that the person could understand. So you could say, "Well, look, the artwork is amazing. This is drawn by adults. This is great." But, well, no, it's still childish. Well, the stories are amazing. Well, it's still a comic book. This thing's worth $10,000. Then all of a sudden, people have a framework to understand it in. Oh, if this thing is worth a lot, okay, cool. That provides with some sort of validity. So when you start talking, when it comes to geek content, remember in this particular environment that we're talking about, where people are buying and selling TV shows, to tell them that an esports final attracted 150 million viewers, that's a number that they can then relate to. So the biggest challenge is finding a way for the people who might be interested in this to understand how big it is, what the opportunities are, and try to find a relatable model, if that makes sense.
Okay, so I'm guessing it's a lot about trying to speak their language, I suppose, and understand.
Yeah, that's key. That's point number one in communication. How I'm trying to get a message across. Communication is a two-part thing. I'm trying to convey a message to be understood. If you're not understood, how does that? Then it doesn't matter what you're saying if you're not being understood. So you've got to find a way to get this message across about these opportunities and what it represents and what can be done.
Indeed.
Interesting.
So how did you manage to get into Icon? How did that come about?
How did I manage to get into Icon? Well, it helps that I knew the original, one of the guys who's been running it for more than 20 years. We were, Grant Charlton. Grant Charlton did not start Icon. It started in 1992, but Grant was there when it started and then took over the running of it, I think in either 93 or 94. So Grant has been running Icon probably as a baby. He started it when it was he helped it when it was a toddler and took it all the way through into its early 20s. And as the geek landscape had started changing, as more events started showing up, I basically said to Grant, look, you've got the longest running pop culture event in Africa, not just South Africa, in Africa. It's time for Icon to maybe take a step up. A lot of people had always given Grant advice, oh, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. I happened at the time to be in a position to be able to help from a management financial perspective to help Icon take a step up to become more of a full-scale convention. It's always had its fans, its longtime fans. It's a multi-generational event. The people who were 16 at the first Icon are now in their early 40s to mid-40s. And they've got kids. Geek parents tend to raise geek kids. So now they want to show them the things that they enjoy, and Icon represented that. And, as I mentioned, I was at a point where I was fortunate enough to have the financial ability to help, and the reason for getting involved. I was at a stage where if I wanted to go to San Diego Comic-Con, I could. If I wanted to go to Gen Con, I could. If I wanted to go to a convention in Australia, I could. And every time I left to go overseas, my geek friends in South Africa would hate me because you're getting to do this cool thing. And it got to a point where it's all right, well, what can we do? GeekXP's origin was actually to try and get people to organize competitions for people to go overseas. Our first event that we were at was at Rage in 2015. And we sent a couple of people to Japan to a Studio Ghibli tour.
That's cool.
And then I realized, well, you can send one person, you can send two people, or you could try and get the sort of experiences that I'm enjoying at conventions overseas and bring them to SA. So that was where the impetus came from. Rather, try and bring a bit of the overseas conventions and what they're doing to South Africa and let everybody enjoy.
That makes sense.
So talking about the GeekXP things, it's not on the questions or anything like that, but I just remember from one of the first, I think it was one of the first Geek Fest we attended, where you guys used to have that booth and people used to do the questionnaires and the treasure hunt or what it was called. I think that was sort of like a treasure hunt. Are you still doing that? Is it an idea to bring that back to the events, or?
That was an idea called the Great Geek Challenge, and we partnered with the Geek of All Trades podcast. The Geek of All Trades team put together that, as you say, pretty much a treasure hunt. It was an achievement list to go around. They would help coordinate with the stall holders at GeekFest, and the initiative was to drive people to get to stalls. Get to a stall, ask a question, interact with that stall holder in some way, and you received an achievement. They would have to sign it off on the sheet. So it was very much a collab, but Geek of All Trades was a driving force behind it. GeekXP helped provide a focal point to come through and submit your questions and answers, and we then moved that onto Icon as well. It's always something that'll be a potential, as a lot of these things are. It just comes down to time and ability to be able to get these things done.
Yeah, it is true. It is true. So, LARPing. This is my favorite one with you.
Sure.
What got you involved in LARPing? And Kiz's favorite part would be your favorite character in class. What are they?
Okay. All right. LARPing, for those who don't know, is an acronym for Live Action Roleplay. I played Dungeons and Dragons from the age of 16. Misspent. No, actually not misspent. I enjoyed every second of it. Yeah. Full weekend. So it'd be like Friday night, Saturday night into Sunday. We'd have these extra long Dungeons and Dragons sessions. I am originally Australian. I immigrated to South Africa in 2002. And around about 2006, I started trying to find my tribe here in South Africa. Where are my geek people? Who are the gamers? Who are the role players? In Pretoria, Johannesburg, it's a very small group that everybody knows everybody else. There are certain focal points. Grant Charlton, who runs Outer Limits and now at Nexus, he was one of those focal points where this is where you go to get your stuff. So around about 2006, 2007, I started finding groups of people to role play with. That moved into collectible card games like Magic the Gathering, Legend of the Five Rings. And it was through that some people had found a rule set to do a live action version, effectively, of Dungeons and Dragons, where you could spend the entire weekend in character pretending to be your character rather than just playing with dice and paper. So they hit me for the first couple of events and I politely declined. And then come the third event, when they ironed out the kinks of how things ran, I signed up. One of the things that I like about the character classes that I play is I'm very much a team person. It doesn't matter what you do. If the team is working cool, then the team achieves. There is no I in team, but there is a me. Team is made up of a lot of me's. So when it came to LARPing, and a lot of the characters that I play, I like to help with control aspects. So lock down that character, lock down this, control the options that people have when it comes to playing. So I chose a character class in the LARP called a Templar, which is a little bit of fighty and a little bit of spellcasting. So in LARPing, in most systems, there's either a standard rogue class, a fighter class, a wizard class, or a mix. You can take a little bit of everything. So I like to be a bit more versatile, and I like to do the control lockdown. So my character, that's what he specialized in. He specialized in spells that stopped people, froze people, charmed people, to try and help lock down on the battlefield what was happening so that other people could then take advantage. Because I joined at the third event, the people who are running it, a quick background of how LARPing works. You need a team of people to declare the stories, to come up with the ideas of how the adventures would happen. And in an event, you might have anywhere from 50 to 100 people playing at various times during the day. Some of those players would be the monsters, and everybody else gets to wail on the monsters to fight. And then for 3 hours, that session runs. Then the next 3 hours, those people will shift around. But there needs to be a very strong story team to organize the stories and the adventures and how these things are happening. And by the time I got involved, the story teams had already done really well in laying out, okay, this is how this thing works. And for the entire weekend, you just get to go away and actually be the character rather than just sitting down and role-playing. So it has a little bit of cosplay aspect to it, which is very cool. And you can go as far as you like with that aspect. One of the characters one of the people I play with, she paints her body green. She has a paint compressor, uses green paint. She has prosthetic teeth made she turns herself into an orc. And it's very cool. Yeah. That it's big commitment, but it helps lend the flavor of, all right, if this person's doing this to get into this, it helps create the authenticity in the moment. And that's what helps make the story a bit more rich.
So what are the
LARPing, go ahead.
What are the what do you get out of the tabletop experience that's different from the LARPing experience?
Tabletop experience is a lot more compressed. In a 3-hour session on tabletop, all of a sudden you've gone from this town to this town to this town. You can do months of gaming inside of a 3-hour session. You can say time passes and make that sort of assumption. Tabletop gaming, it has to be a lot more in your own mind. So what you come up with in your own mind is always going to be better than what anybody else can do or make. So that's part of the tabletop experience, that it's all about how rich you can make this in your own mind.
Okay. Whereas the LARPing is it's visceral, it's real, it's
LARPing is visceral, but it also lends itself very much to deep sense of achievement. As an example, my girlfriend she works in the banking industry. She's very high up in the banking industry, very straight-laced. On the weekend, she will dress up as a barbarian or an elf or a wizard and run around a forest doing these things. Now, she'd be mortified to find anybody at her work knowing that this is what she did, because it's very much she's in a corporate environment. It's very much about perception. But she, as a barbarian, she started up a group with some other people, and they were very low level, so they didn't have a lot of hit points or anything like that, or a lot of abilities. And there was a moment where they all went out as a group to fight certain monsters, and they were getting wiped. She was the last person standing, and
she survived.
Yeah, she remembered that she had a particular ability that barbarians have, where once per combat she can channel everything into one massive hit that does a lot of damage. She remembered that at the last minute, hit this thing, took it down. So she was the survivor. She saved the rest of her people, and she got to beat the monster. And when you're actually holding a sword and you're trying to hit somebody who has a shield and really doesn't want to be hit, it's different to just rolling a dice and going, yes, you hit, or yes, you didn't hit. You actually have to physically do this, and that gives a sense of achievement that's a little bit different, because you've got to do it. You've got to do the running around, and that's, if you speak to any LARPers and ask them what their favorite stories are, it's all about these, holy crap, we were up against 100 monsters and we managed to pull it out, and it was a hectic fight. It's a visceral level of achievement. It's a physical level of achievement.
That's really cool. If you could only choose one of them to do for the rest of your life, which would you choose, LARPing or tabletop?
If I had to pick one, I would shoot you. It's almost like
option C.
Almost like, it's almost like Kirk with his Kobayashi Maru situation.
It's impossible.
D&D playing tabletop. It allows for more. It allows to do more and play more and change the things. The thing with LARPing is it doesn't have to be medieval fantasy. You can have a vampire LARP. You can have a futuristic LARP. You can have an urban fantasy. So if those fans of things like Jim Butcher and Harry Dresden, that's a LARP that can be had. The Vampire the Masquerade LARPs tend to be more political rather than combat-y. But all of that's possible in the tabletop as well. It's just a matter of which flavor you want to pick. And you can have a role-playing team, a role-playing session every night of the week. Whereas LARPing, it's a physical thing, so it's just easier. I can get more gaming done from the tabletop perspective. But I would hate you for making me make that choice.
Well, it might not be me. It might be some alien species that comes and makes you choose.
Yes, it might be COVID-19 lockdowns.
Yeah.
And so we're on Discord right now. So on Monday nights, I normally play a role-playing campaign with various friends, and it'll play for 2 to 3 months, and then we'll change it around. So tonight I'm giving it a skip to join you guys because you were polite enough to invite me.
Oh, thank you.
Oh no, that's cool. So Monday night is one game. Thursday nights is another game. Friday nights with Discord and with platforms like Roll20. Now it doesn't matter. You can have multiple sessions a week. So it'll be easier to do a tabletop campaign and tabletop role-playing than it would be to do LARPing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's getting even easier now with D&D Beyond, and Discord now has a bot array that incorporates D&D Beyond into it. There's Fantasy Grounds, there's Tabletop Simulator. There's so many ways to play D&D right now. It's probably the most accessible it's ever been.
And the cool thing is that it doesn't matter where people are. We've had people leave our campaign because they've immigrated, but now we're trying. It's just a matter of time zones. It's there we go. 2 hours. You guys are 1 hour or 2 hours behind? 1 hour. So East Coast of New York is 6 hours behind. Sean Isaacs, the local artist, he plays online with people in other time zones. It just happens. You can have people from all around the world, friends from around the world, strangers from around the world that you can just connect in and have a best of breed and a best of people in these spaces, and it's great.
Well, bringing up COVID-19, I think we should address the elephant in the room. How is COVID-19 affecting? How is COVID-19 affecting things like Icon and other conventions and general geek culture that you know about?
There is a convention in San Diego. It's actually started by some of the team that helped build San Diego Comic-Con. It was called San Diego Comic Fest, and they normally run March. I'm just checking my calendar. San Diego Comic Fest. Yeah, early March, mid-March. They were the week before Emerald City Comic-Con. And one guest pulled out because of COVID-19. This was early March in the United States. One guest pulled out, everybody else did. But 2 weeks before Emerald City Comic-Con was when Seattle and Washington State got hit really hard. And somebody made the comment that San Diego Comic Fest was the last event for the year. And everyone went, maybe that sounds a bit rough. But already now, the announcement has been made that San Diego Comic-Con, not happening this year. Anime Expo, not happening this year. There's Comic-Con Cape Town, not happening. It was supposed to have already run, not happening. The Rand Show has reinvented itself with a very, very deep focus on geek and pop culture by incorporating the Rush platform, Rush Esports by the NAG team. That's not happening. So already, and unfortunately the United States, some people just are not taking it seriously and are trying to get things open again. The more that happens, the longer the shutdown is just going to happen. So events worldwide, Kamichi in Germany, not happening. It's Annecy, the animation festival, not happening. It's going to cause a big issue at the back end of the year. Remember, conventions happen mostly over a weekend. There's only 52 of those in a year. So pop culture events, if you take 6 months worth of pop culture events and try to cram them into 2 to 3 months at the end of the year, there will just not be the space to handle all of the events. It's just that simple.
No, they won't.
So the choice has to be made from a lot of them is like, are we going to take the hit? Because we just don't know. We don't want people's lives at stake. Yeah, we can come and have fun, but we can get together on Discord and we can have fun as well. So WonderCon is run by the same people who do San Diego Comic-Con, a company called Comic-Con International. WonderCon got cancelled, and then they said, right, we're going to go virtual. We can run sessions. One of the big things that I enjoyed about doing conventions overseas that I wanted to bring to South Africa was panels. Sitting down, having an opportunity to talk to people, hearing them have a chat, and sharing their stories, etc. You can now do that online. You can have it's just an extension of streaming, really. So
exactly what we're doing.
Yeah. So you've got conventions that will be struggling to find space. You're going to have alternatives being explored. So now they'll start with virtual passes and that sort of thing online. So it looks like that for at least the next 6 months, the convention scene globally is going to be rough. Because take the United States and take Germany. Often, like they fill spots number 1 and number 2 when it comes to international travelers. If the United States is still messing around with infections, no other country is going to let United States citizens in. So the conventions and those sorts of things that rely on bigger crowds, that rely on lots and lots of people, just may not want to have them. So for the next 4 to 6 months, there's going to be this wait and see approach, and unfortunately, it has to be that way.
Yeah,
so it's really
it's a lot of uncertainty still, and we don't know.
That being said, is the virtual route something you guys are looking at doing for Icon, or are you going to move it to next year or later this year? What would be your approach for that? Because you're obviously affected with all of this as well.
We're at the moment, we was part of the reason for the delay in the announcement for Icon's dates was you cannot make an announcement until you have signed an agreement with the venue. You can't say, we will be at Empress Palace unless you actually have a signed document. And sometimes those things take a bit longer to get done. We're probably going to follow our brethren with Icon by the Sea and just chill for the year. This thing is affecting, especially with the smaller conventions, because smaller conventions don't have the resources like a Reed that can still pay salaries, that can still run a ship. A lot of the people that organize these events on a smaller scale have now lost income. They've now lost income. They've lost business. So trying to get that thing organized, there are companies that have bigger resources. We were looking at other ways to help inside the community with other events. But unfortunately, because of all the lockdowns, that's now shut down. So we're probably going to go the hiatus route for this year and just take some time, reset, and come back next year with a bigger option.
Oh, well, there you go. From the horse's mouth. Yeah. Just sad. Because
it is sad.
You know what? It's fine because we can't get there, so it's
fine. We can't come. So it's fine. You know, we were like,
stay on our head.
It works out for you guys because you got more time.
We realized we're not able to make the cons this year because we don't have the cash because we're saving up most of our money to get the rest of our stuff along with our pets.
Right. Sure. So the South African convention theme. The South African convention scene is a bit topsy-turvy right now. I've been on interviews before where we've discussed the economics of conventions and what that means and everything that goes into that. The South African convention scene for the last couple of years is now in a state of flux. Yeah. Because we just don't have the resources, we don't have the scope to have events in close proximity, and so we want to take some time and see what's happening, see what's going on, and make sure that we do right by the people who've been coming to Icon for more than 20 years. For a lot of Icons fans, it's I want a weekend away where I can just role play, and that's cool. And we've got to find a way to help with that right now. So we may look at a virtual option, maybe. We just need to see where things are happening.
Yeah. Okay, so we'd just like to say a couple of hellos. Say hi to Silverback.
A.K.A. Jonathan.
A.K.A. Jonathan. And Wreck-It Ralph, a.k.a. Ralph.
And on that note, Jonathan said he would like to see how a virtual con could work, depending on how it's done. Either way, it would be quite interesting.
Yeah. The only way you can really... I mean, a virtual con at present is what you're seeing now. It's live streaming. It's people interviewing. Obviously, people have to isolate. I don't know if you've been watching if you watch a lot of esports, but currently the Dota ESL 1 competition that was running, it was running out of LA, but for the European and Russian teams. So they had to be up at 4 a.m. to handle the time zone differences because they're in Los Angeles. So that's 9 hours behind where we are now. But those people were all in a studio, and that's just not possible for a lot of people. So having people like yourselves, we've got a host in Durban, we've got a host in the UK, and then we've got the talent somewhere else. I'm not saying I'm the talent, but you've got the talent that would be in a panel. Well, thank you. So how a virtual convention would go would be a lot like this. Payment, putting it behind a paywall would probably be a little bit of an issue. So it would rather be take donations, like on a Twitch model, donations or Patreon, those sorts of things. This is what you're looking at. This is how a virtual convention would run.
Yeah. Interesting.
Geek-Inspired Podcast Convention.
Yeah. Absolutely. So that
GIP con.
Yeah, there's not a problem with that. You could have a day where, like, you good folks were behind one of the really cool initiatives at Nexus Hub, which was Creators United. That Creators United is an example of a convention. It's a convention model. You had streamers who were for 24 hours doing their own channels, but you had a central point where those streamers could come in and deliver stuff.
Yeah.
That is a virtual con, where you have a host panel, a main panel, or even just a talking desk where they're talking about all the different streams that are happening. So go into this channel and you'll have a chat with Jim Lee, who's talking about DC Comics and their new moves around distribution. But if you go over to so-and-so's channel, you can watch somebody draw something, because that's happening right now through Twitter. A lot of creators are doing that. They're going onto Twitter and going, cool, I'm stuck at home, I'll do a live draw. A virtual convention is just somebody organizing all of that together. And it's like an amalgam of podcasting, live streaming, and interviewing.
That's really awesome.
So,
Yes.
WCS.
World Cosplay Summit.
How did you decide to incorporate World Cosplay Summit into Icon? And, well, yeah, basically, what was the reason for wanting to bring that here?
Sure.
It's a really cool thing.
Well, thank you. All right, so...
Yeah.
We're in Scotland.
Bring it there.
Right, so World Cosplay Summit, for those who are not familiar, World Cosplay Summit is the biggest cosplay competition globally. 40 countries or more every year send a team. Now, it's got to be 2 people. They send a team to Japan to compete on a world stage. And it also takes cosplay to its fullest in that it has a performance component. You must create the costume, but you must also embody that character in a 2.5-minute skit. Icon was the first convention in South Africa, at least, to run a cosplay competition. I think it was around 2008. Charlton would know the official date, but Icon ran the country's first cosplay competition, where we had people turning up at the convention in costume anyway, so we'll make it into a competition. So as we moved Icon to a bigger scale, we were looking for a cool competition. We ran a competition in 2016, which was live streamed. We had the first live stream of the cosplay competition, and we also had the top 10, the finalists. We had that turned into a calendar. So we actually had a Icon 2017 calendar, and the photos that win there were all of the winners, the top 10 winners from 2016. And it was around that time that we're thinking, well, we could do this, but there are big competitions that we could potentially be a part of. And a couple of cosplayers had suggested, why not look at World Cosplay Summit? And we sent a mail saying, hey, we would look to be interested. And it turns out a couple of other events had also sent out the same mail to World Cosplay Summit. And the thing about WCS is that you must be invited. So you don't ask. You can let them know and they can have discussions, but you must be invited by the Japanese committee to be part of it. So we had some conversations, we had some very nice conversations, and we understood what their role was, what they were trying to achieve. Right now, they've got a very good initiative called Cosstay at Home. Rather than cosplay at home, it's cosplay at home, cosstay at home, and the other hashtag is takukos, which is home cos. WCS takes what's possible with cosplay very, very seriously, and they want it to bring people together from around the world. So they've got that initiative running. They're very cognizant of their role. We had a chat to them. They came back to us and said, we would like to formally invite South Africa to be a part of it.
Nice.
And it extended from the same idea behind Icon. The experiences that I got to have when I go to conventions overseas, I wanted to help bring those opportunities for people here. So by being part of a global competition, South African cosplayers can now get that sort of exposure to go over the world and have hundreds of thousands of people watch them perform, see their photos, see their craftsmanship. So we wanted to give South African cosplayers, because we know that there is a top level of cosplayers here that are world class. Jinx Kitty, what she did with that costume was ridiculous. I know the effort that she and Mao put in for their Legend of Zelda cosplay performance for World Cosplay Summit. And Kinpatsu. It's just ridiculous levels of skill. And I wanted to help provide that opportunity to get them to compete on a bigger scale. And World Cosplay Summit was the opportunity there.
Is it still going to go ahead? I know it's supposed to be coming up soon, but obviously with all the restrictions on it.
Typically, World Cosplay Summit runs at the end of July into the first week of August. So if you think about the San Diego Comic-Con dates, WCS would start immediately the week after. That's where they run. Right now, no official announcement's been made. We're moving along as if things would be okay, but no official announcement has come out yet. Japan has started doing some things now about locking down over COVID-19. The Olympics have been postponed. But part of that is because of extended lockdowns in countries, athletes are not going to get the opportunities to train the way that they should. So the Olympics would not have people performing at their best. So rather, let's push it back and give people time to get to their best. So right now, nothing has been formally announced.
Release the Geek. How did that come about? Your very own podcast show. Those of you who don't know, he's a fellow podcaster too.
So Release the Geek, the Release the Geek origin story was actually inspired by the Nerdist podcast. For those who remember the Nerdist podcast. The Nerdist podcast had Henry Rollins. I don't know if you know Henry Rollins. He's a very well-known hardcore punk singer. He now does a lot of speaking tours. He does his own podcast as well. I can tell you the moment the idea for Release the Geek and how it started. I was sitting in traffic, driving to work, listening to Henry Rollins tell the most ridiculous story ever. Rollins was is a big fan of Iggy Pop. And he was given the opportunity, and he's telling the story that he was given the opportunity to perform on the same stage as Iggy Pop. He was going to be the lead-in act. And Rollins is very known for being wired, 110%, lots of energy, lots of screaming. So finding out that he was going to be performing right in front of his idol was a big opportunity for him. So he got into training. He got himself so utterly fit. He prepped himself, goes out on the stage. It was, I believe, a concert in the UK. And he gave it everything. The crowd was going berserk. And he was physically exhausted. He'd given every ounce of energy into his performance. As he walks off stage, Iggy Pop nods to him. So that was pretty good. I was like, holy crap, my idol has just told me I did good. Iggy went out and turned it up to 11. He went berserk. At one point, he had the crowd come up on stage. They trashed all the plants. He just went off. And Henry said that he was standing off to the side, just mouth open, watching this man turning it up to 11. And he finished with throwing a guitar straight up over his head, not looking at where it was going to land, and screaming the final note into the microphone. The guitar missed him by 2 inches, smashed onto the stage behind him into a shower of sparks. The crowd lost its mind. Iggy walks off stage, and he makes a beeline straight to Henry, and Henry's standing there aghast. And he said, "You did really, really good, but no one outperforms me." Now, that story took about 10 minutes to tell. And as I'm sitting with my headphones in the car listening to the story going, I want to be on the other side of that. I want to have that conversation with cool people, because it happens all the time in geek culture. You'll start relaying the stories about your D&D adventures. You'll start relaying the stories about how this thing started. Why did these things come about? What were your amazing experiences? And I said, I want to be the other side of that. Now, my day job at the time was as a trainer facilitator. So I've got a background in training. Kerry would know. As it just so happens, Kerry would know. And part of what I could do really well was help channel and communicate and try and get the information out that I need so that I could give the information that they need. So I'm okay with asking questions and helping build a narrative. So I wanted to do that. And I thought, well, how do I do it? And I mentioned it to a group of friends, and one of those friends, who I had no idea what he did for a day job, I knew him from the LARP community, actually, and the role-playing community. I said, I'm going to start a podcast. He said, I'd love to help. I said, dude, cool, what can you do? And he said, well, I'm a sound engineer. Oh, okay, well, now I've got a sound engineer. And Vittorio Leonardi, the comedian, is a good friend of mine. And we've always had great conversations, great repartee. And I thought, this is somebody that I would like to have alongside me to ask these questions. So that was the impetus that I wanted to ask these questions. And then as the idea grew, I realized that it's easier to ask a famous person to be a guest on a podcast than just appearing to be a stalker. Hey, I'd like to sit down and talk to you for an hour over coffee. Would that be okay? Or you could say, hey, I run a podcast. We've been running for 5 years. I've interviewed Remedy Feist. I've interviewed Candice McClure from Battlestar Galactica. I've interviewed Jim Zub. I've interviewed Megan Marie. I've interviewed top-line comics people, Brian Haberlin, one of the creators behind Witchblade. The moment you get a couple of names, they become your coat pegs for the next interview. So you can say to somebody, hey, I've already interviewed this. So all you need to do is work up, and it's not hard to do. Vittorio Leonardi is a comedian. So through Vittorio, we got to do Mel Miller, who's an incredibly well-known and famous comedian inside of South Africa. Through Vic, we interviewed John Flismus. The John Flismus interview was quite surprising. For those who know John as a comedian, he's quite raw. He operates very blue, does not mind the swearies at all. And so when we interviewed him, the first question that we ask normally on Release the Geek is like, what do you geek out about? Are you a geek? What do you geek out about? And his response was art and technology. Oh, the interview then went that way. We ended up talking about the potential for technology to affect comedy. Say you had the ability to monitor through maybe an optical implant or something, the pulse rate and the body temperature of everybody in the room. A comedian can use that to know when to deliver the right punchline. It became
every bit of natural comedy out of it, though, doesn't it?
You've got to get them to that point. That's one thing you've got to do. You can be formulaic and you can map that, yes, this is the right time to deliver, but you need, and that's what makes good comedians, that they have an ability to read the room, know when to deliver the right punchline. But I never expected when speaking to John Flismus that we'd be talking about like advanced bioengineering to be able to aid as far as comedy was concerned. Comedy is performance art. It wasn't what I expected. So that's where Release the Geek came from, that I wanted to have that conversation. I wanted to be on the other side of the cool stories over coffee. And once you get a name that agrees, then you can use that as authenticity. To say that we've got 150 odd podcasts in the can now, then it's not a fly-by-night operation. Here are some legit names that we've interviewed. It helps give that credibility to be able to ask for the next one. So if anybody was looking to do this, the only thing that I can suggest is keep doing more of them. Because the more you do, it adds to your body of work. You get more skill in handling tech. Like, I had to drop off this call to switch over to another network so that we could stream together. Now, has that happened to you guys before? How do you handle that sort of drop? These are the things. I apologize, I'm going to digress a little bit. In Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers, he talks about the Beatles. When the Beatles started, they were crap. They were absolute garbage. And all they could do was play on the weekends at certain pubs in Liverpool. Through the machinations of their manager, they got a gig in Germany as the house band. I believe it was at a strip club or a gentleman's club. But they were then required to play. They were then required to play 8 hours a day. By the time they finished that, there was nothing that had gone wrong that they hadn't experienced, and they knew how to adapt. So by the time they got to the US, they were polished, because when you have to sing and play 8 to 10 hours a day, you can't play the same stuff. You've got to learn something new. Something's going to go wrong. How do you adapt? I dropped out on my call. How did you guys adapt? Next time it happens, you'll know what to do. So anybody who is looking at creating cool content, I humbly endorse, emphatically endorse, podcasts, streaming, doing these sorts of interviews. Even if you're not getting a big name, you can leverage what you're already doing. You can leverage the people that you know who've got cool stories and bring them in, and it's just going to add to your body of work and your experience.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. I have that same attitude, because I've been doing content creation since 2015. I started off just writing blogs, then I went on to audio, then I went on to video, and now it's like a combination of everything. And each thing you do teaches you something, each piece of work. And it's like it's never always totally pointless as long as you learn something from it. So I'm with you there.
There's a gentleman, Chetan Narula. It's a name that most of you probably won't recognize. I like my cricket. I am Australian. Sorry, I like my cricket. Chetan Narula is an Indian cricket journalist, and I was listening to the Radio 2000 coverage of cricket. And Chetan was in the box talking to the other commentators, and he had some really good insights. And it triggered the idea of Indian cricket fans are probably the most passionate fans of any fan base in the world. Here's a guy that's in country right now, and he's a cricket journalist, so he knows the cricket scene. I want to ask him that question. What makes Indian cricket fans the most passionate in the world? And he said, yep, I'd be happy to have this. I've got a 40-minute window this afternoon after the Joburg test. We recorded that interview in a noisy mug and bean in Santon City. And he had a 40-odd minute window, but he was able to tell me why. What is it that makes Indian fans go absolutely bonkers when they're in the ground? And it was amazing. And I hadn't thought of these things, that there are more than 12, I think there's 12 to 15 official test venues in India. Now, the team may only play 6 in a year. And some of those are cities that you can't miss out on. So they might play 6 to 8 tests. So that means your chance of seeing the Indian team may only come every 3 years. So when you get a ticket, you're going to be passionate. You're going to give it, you're all supporting your team. I was like, wow, I hadn't thought of these logistical issues behind it. And that thing out of nowhere has now given me the base of looking at things differently. And I got to Chetan through a friend who works in the cricket commentary team. So that you can have so much fun creating the content. You can start creating the content you like and hope that other people like it. If they don't, find your tribe. Find the 100 people around the world who think the way you do, who like the things you do, and are enjoying the thing that you're putting out. And that sort of fan base, when you start finding them, is very, very cool, because those are the ones that are there authentically and for the right reasons.
Yeah. So just a side note here. The reason why she pointed at me is because the whole strip club. The whole strip club thing. We had a gig there once. My brother and myself are in a band. We played at a strip club back in South Africa.
It was a strip club that was changed into a bar,
which was
but they still had the strip poles and
I've played as a lead singer of this band in front of a strip pole. I actually thought of grabbing onto the thing and just spinning around it for no reason other than the fact that it's there.
This is something I did not know about you. This is
no
great.
one really does. It was an embarrassing gig. I mean, a whole 5 people watched us, and it wasn't the greatest gig ever, I can tell you that.
But it makes now for a great story.
Yeah.
It does.
It does.
So, Giannis, I've come across both of you. When I say both of you, I mean SA Geeks, Giannis. I've come across you at conventions where you're doing what I'm doing. You're doing the hustle to try and get an interview, to try and make the content. Giannis, give me a story where it was, holy crap, that thing was amazing. Because I've seen you at Comic-Con, I've seen you at Rage. You must have a story which is, that thing went left field. I have no idea how that happened. Give me a story.
Jeez, I mean, there's quite a lot. One of the things I like to focus on is just when you're interviewing people, like, they're just so appreciative that you are talking to them in the first place. So like it's like, by interviewing them, you're like kind of providing them a service. You're probably providing them with like validation. And just like, sometimes they're so appreciative that they will like just hand you things, in honor of that. And like, so then it's like the cycle of gratitude, and like, the relationship builds up over time. And so it's just like, just doing this type of thing, just your network just builds up, people become appreciative of you, you build connections. So like, and it's weird because like at one point you'd be like, okay, I interviewed a local board game developer, Rob Acton, and we had this amazing interview about his game and how he got into it and stuff. And then I was really happy to just get the interview, and I walked away, and like, he came running behind me after that, and he was like, oh, thank you for showing interest, here's a copy of the board game. And
nice.
I've played that board game quite a few times now, and I've gotten quite a bit of enjoyment out of it. And me and Rob, try and connect a couple of times, and I'm hoping to work with him in the future and stuff like that. So it's just building up these relationships is really cool. And it's like, it's about fun stuff. It's about stuff that you enjoy. It's about stuff you like talking about, and that's what's really cool about it. Yeah.
If I may riff on that just for a second.
Sure.
The number one thing, every single person in the world, not every single person, the majority of people, their favorite topic in the world is them. Yeah. You get that from customer service. You get that from working in call centers and stuff like that. It's one of the things they teach you about communication with people. So it is a bugbear of mine. I cringe. I know it, but I know it's my bugbear, but it's a bugbear. I do not like interviewers with what I call the optometrist syndrome.
Interesting. Elaborate.
Every sentence starting with I.
Oh yeah.
I'm here to, if I'm sitting down talking to Feist, I want to hear from him. I'm asking questions. You guys don't want to hear about how I read his books walking to school when I was 16. It might make for a better story. But I got Raymond Feist on the other side of this. I want to hear him. So content where the interviewers are where they're connecting with their guest a little bit and trying to share stuff from them, cool. It may have its place, but leave the eyes out. I agree with this. Not interested whether you agree. I want to hear what that person on the other side is saying about something, and I want to know if I agree with them. So if you are making content, avoid optometrist syndrome completely. Drop the eyes. You can find a way to phrase the question that doesn't involve you. So you could say, some people have this reaction. Then it's not from you. You can phrase it in a different way. So it's a particular bugbear. I apologize.
No. That's a very interesting point, and I suppose it's a good lesson for everybody to learn.
It's a good lesson.
Yeah. Sometimes it's very annoying when people suddenly make a topic about them, and you're like,
yes,
well, it's so weird. I started off trying to tell you something, and all of a sudden, it's about you.
You're just focusing on the eyes.
Yeah. Now that I've said it, I apologize, because that might be something you hear all the time. And there are certain keywords that I know when I re-listen to content. Like, I hate the term like.
Yeah.
Unless it's a comparator, I hate like. And I'm almost want to issue challenges to a podcast here. I will donate. You started last episode. You had 13 likes in 5 minutes. If you cut that down to 5, I'll donate $10 to a charity. Something along those lines.
Jeez. I say like all the time. Likes. I feel personally attacked right now. No, but it's something. It's something I'm aware of. That's one of the things that's cool about like recording yourself. And then listening back to it, you realize you have all these these verbal tics, and you wonder what are other people? What other people you see other people's version of what you might sound like. That's not necessarily in your head, because you feel like you. Projecting something.
I honestly believe that everything that comes out of my mouth is golden. It was a perfect sentence the first time, and then I go back and listen to it, and I cringe. Now, going back to like the first 5 years ago when we started doing podcasts, listening to them now, it's like nails down a chalkboard. I cringe. But these were the things that I did at the start. I might think the content was great, and the content from the other side, the person I'm interviewing, was great. My performance, crap. My performance was garbage. So it's you need to be willing to take that self-examination and build from it.
You start biting yourself in the ass when you ask those kinds of questions. Just looking at yourself more. Interesting.
That's it. That's it.
I have not said like once, but still, I
like
saying like.
Like you.
Anyway,
that's cool. Listen, if it's your own verbal thing, and so what your way of communicating, above everything is to be authentic.
Yeah, don't change yourself.
Don't change yourself. You might find that there are things that you might want to improve on, you might want to get better at, and that's cool. But if you're looking for people, you're putting content out there, it's got to be authentic content, because people really can spot fakes very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Then the wall of flame that is the internet comes down upon those people very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So authenticity above all.
Yeah, this is advice for all of you guys watching this kind of a scene, this podcast, streaming, anything like that. Just
don't be fake.
Don't be fake.
Liz has a dragon.
Yes.
Authenticity above all. Yes.
But it's
coming from a dragon. It's obviously wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kept. She is the MSR dragon today. She is lucky.
I'm lucky.
Lucky the dragon, that is. But anyway, continuing with the questions.
Yes, sorry. I apologize. I tend to.
No, it was a good tangent. It was a good tangent.
Never apologize.
Best digression. I loved it. I loved it.
You started.
I'm sure people out there loved it.
Anyway, so we've obviously just spoken about the COVID that's going on, all the events being cancelled. With this pandemic going on, do you think anything's going to bounce back? Do you think any of do you think South African cons, or like all of the smaller cons, are going to bounce back?
Yes.
Straight answer.
With all right. It's not the conventions I'm worried about.
Yeah.
It's the artist alley. It's the smaller content creators who now no longer have the ability to. Sorry, I'm just gonna. I need to cough. I'm not sick. I've just got something in my throat. I'm just gonna mute myself.
Calling the COVID task force.
And you can't get infected with whatever it is. Because this is digital. There is a horror movie to that effect, but no.
Hello, Ramaphosa.
Yeah. Wait.
999. Wait, that's
So part of the nature of the let's deal with South Africa. Part of the nature of the South African scene over the last couple of years has been the flux that certain big events have caused. I don't know if you saw that Rage this year changed its dates. Yeah. And part of that was the necessity to give a gap, especially around artist alley people who are making cool things, but they're often handcrafted. They do not have a window. They did not have a window between major events to resupply.
Restock, yeah.
So now, if these things were staggered through the year, and there was a time frame where you could step back and replenish, that would be much better. The scope, the play space in South Africa for conventions was odd. I mean, there was a bit of jostling around. Icon shifted due to factors we've already discussed with Jonathan, actually. Icon shifted, FanCon shifted. Then there's another convention at the start of the year. Then there's this convention here. Now these two conventions at the back end of the year. The South African convention scene was already in a state of flux a little bit anyway. It already started seeing certain levels of attrition. There were smaller cons that I didn't see any mention of this year that ran last year. I know Dark Carnival took a break due to change of ownership. So, but that's acceptable. But there were a couple of other smaller conventions that I didn't hear anything from at all. So I don't know if they just stopped or whatever. So the SA Sim was already in a state of flux, and now nobody's doing anything. Nobody can do anything. Yeah. So the people who organize the conventions can be okay. So, all right, let me preface that. San Diego Comic-Con, you all know that San Diego Comic-Con has been canceled. San Diego Comic-Con has a bank account separate to all of its other finances that has $25 million sitting in it. Every year, it's got that money sitting in it purely in case of cancellation.
Yeah.
Now this year they have to use it. Yeah. And it's public. It's relatively public knowledge insofar as CCI, the people behind Comic-Con in San Diego and WonderCon, is a non-profit organization. One of the rules around non-profits is that you must publish certain financial information, like salaries of directors. So there's a lot of financial information that is made available around CCI, and in the industry, multiple people knew. They've got this account that pays out everybody 25 bar, everybody's paid out, we're free and clear, we don't have to worry about it, we can come back next year.
Yeah. Certain
bigger events, if they're privately funded, if they're privately run by like a small company, their cash flow is going to take a hit. So whether they can bounce back, because oftentimes these events provide the cash flow for a company for a year to get through to the next event. And that's the way with the Artist Alley people as well. There are a lot of these events where, 70,000 people at Comic-Con Africa. For a Artist Alley person, that's a massive opportunity to turn over a lot of stock and get them through for the next few months. And a lot of them are working. And these are people who might be doing this as a side hustle, which I thoroughly endorse. You need this to get through from one event to another. The events themselves, the big scale events generally have some financing behind them. Privately owned events, people can come back to it. They're not the people I'm worried about. It's the creators and the Artist Alley people who are going to be hit incredibly hard. If they are able to sell some stuff online, they can't get stuff to replace it. So, yeah, that is more what I'm worried about. And unfortunately, a lot of those people, this is their side hustle, so it's not a formal company. And because it's not formal, they're excluded from a lot of the government money.
That sucks.
It does suck, yeah. That's terrible. So, nice. This is a nice segue. Actually, it works very well.
Okay.
Talking about Artist Alleys and how people are struggling in that aspect. I would like to know, what is the future of Icon with all of this happening? What is the future of Icon? Icon by the Sea and this. We know that obviously you guys aren't going to do anything this year, but are you going to be able to restart Icon again next year? Are you going to be able to push it and show the rest of the geek community that you are still there and that everyone is still available to, or everyone can still come and see?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Sorry.
And what are the plans? Yes. Sorry.
What are the plans?
On top of that, what are the future plans? When and if Icon comes back, what are the future plans for you?
Okay. In 2016, we decided to go larger, make it much more of a convention-style event, because that was needed. It just so happened at the same time in Cape Town, the FanCon guys, who are fabulous, also started panels, etc. So that space started filling, and now there are large-scale events that meet that need, that provide the international experience that we were helping to provide to people because it was just lacking. So what Icon will be doing is refocusing on what it's good at, and that experience that people have of spending 3 days of gaming. There might be some panels. There will always be panels. Panels are something that's just fun. It allows people to connect through, but Icon will be refocusing on the things that it does well and what it's good at, and leveraging those points. Icon has long been the home for the Settlers of Catan competition, the national championships. The last couple of years, it's been shared around with a couple of other organizations, but we've long been the home of the national championship for board games, for card games, those sorts of things.
So we see some new games and stuff coming, like new board games that you're going to.
Well, we've got ideas as to how we can start leveraging that idea. Now, we've got a great relationship because Outer Limits was always a part of Icon. Outer Limits was a key reseller for Solarpop, and it used to be Sky Castle Games, Board Games SA, and now it's Solarpop. They've amalgamated. So Icon was, and actually, Giannis, that's one of my keywords. So I hate it. I hate it. Post-production, please edit out all of my so's.
Remove all the so's. Okay.
Yeah. Icon has those relationships, and we need to leverage into that more and provide those opportunities around the things that Icon's good at.
Yeah, awesome. It's really, it's believe me, Les, you have no idea how awesome this is. Because going back to Icon, what Icon is like, it has been a dream of mine for a very long time. Kez's dad, before he passed, also said that he would always want Icon to return to what it used to be.
He actually took us to our very first Icon.
Yeah, he actually was the one who introduced us to our very first Icon. So, but regardless of that, he actually had, if anything, he would want Icon to return to its former glory of board games, Magic the Gathering, D&D, and Warhammer. Especially Warhammer. He loved his Warhammer.
We made, in 2016, 2017, when we were at Gallagher Convention Center, we made that a focus. We made it a focal point because it's very visual. So we had the tables there in the middle for people to walk around. And in 2016, it worked really, really well, and in 2017. The last couple of years, it's more been logistical issues about how we could have showcased things with Emperor's Palace, and we're learning lessons all the time with how best to use Emperor's as a venue. And what we should be doing there. So the first year, just through a missed opportunity, we were in the red sheds, which was cool, but we knew where we wanted to be, and we wanted to be inside. And then we changed the date to Easter. So one of the things about experimentation, about trying to find solutions, you can't make too many changes at once, because then you don't know what the problem was. Change a little bit at a time. Okay, cool. We moved inside, all right, but the date changed, so now we shouldn't have done that. But it was from a specific point of view. It was an invitation, Emperors, to move to that date to try that out. So we know where we would like to overperform.
Yeah.
If that works. We would like to overperform in certain areas and be that icon that everybody enjoys coming to, and everybody has a great time. And there are the dodgy dogs and the bottomless coffee. The bottomless coffee.
Bottomless coffee, gotta have it.
Yeah, at the end, it's been an icon staple. Unfortunately, moving to like formal convention houses, convention events, you can't have bottomless coffee because you have to pay the convention venue for that, and that's not a tin of Rick coffee on a table over there.
No.
It's a little bit different. So every time we've tried to do something new, we've learned a little bit more. So we were aiming for a more back to the roots, but at scale event for this year. So unfortunately, COVID-19 is a factor. We're going to try and, same thing with Icon by the Sea. Icon by the Sea definitely coming back. We just needed time to reset and rethink, and that's what we've chosen to do now.
Oh, that's really awesome. Now, with the dates for Icon, though, or Icon Joburg, are you going to have it over, obviously next year, over Easter to a different date so that you don't get nailed by the rand show?
Easter was a disaster. For a couple of reasons. In 2017, when Icon was at Gallagher Convention Center, we wanted to play, and a lot of this is on me from my heritage, my convention heritage. In Australia, there's multiple public holidays, and they always try to have the public holidays scheduled around a weekend to give you the long weekend. So in Australia, a lot of the conventions that I attended when I was in my teens and early 20s were 3-day events because the public holiday was either on the Friday or the Monday. So it's always been a thing for me to try and get that public holiday. Part of the problem is that the public holiday, that South Africa works on a monthly pay cycle. In Oz, it's either on a week or a fortnight, so you can have these regular things, but running an event on a certain weekend to try and get a public holiday, there's a number of logistical factors that affect this. The public holiday that we picked in 2017 happened to be Father's Day. And people went and spent time with their families. you can't fault that.
No.
Easter was also, a lot of people went away. A lot of people go away. A lot of the regulars that would have gone to Icon went away. So we did not get anywhere near the numbers that we normally get at an Icon. So we said to Empress, thank you very much for the opportunity to run an Easter event. No, we will not be running Easter ever again.
Never again.
Now, the idea of moving it into back into the middle of the year, FanCon has made that shift to the middle of the year. There is Comic-Con Cape Town now, who is... We can discuss their date selection at another time, but they aimed for the end of April. With the RAND show, the RAND show is a very good opportunity for World Cosplay Summit to be in front of more people. As good as Icon could ever be, it won't get 200,000 people, which is what the RAND show gets.
Yeah.
So putting my World Cosplay Summit ambassador hat on, I need to do the best thing for that. And having a chat to Michael James, the people behind NAG, who were helping RAND show upskill, it was kind of an easy transition. That World Cosplay Summit was better served to be at a wider audience, because that's what it's for. It's a performance. So, but Icon will not be running over the Easter weekend as long as I am involved.
Yes.
On that point of, things changing with conventions and things, we brought this up on the podcast before when we're talking to people from different angles, vendors versus creators and that sort of thing. And the topic of actually niching down differently comes up, and it is something that I think about now that the geek culture community is growing bigger and it's getting bigger every year. What about the idea of just having conventions around a specific niche and not trying to cover everything? Because the bigger conventions, they have the money to pull off being able to cover everything, but the smaller ones are getting out competed on that level. So what about having conventions that are just Dungeons and Dragons, just card games, just cosplay, and nothing else? Do you think we'll have that anytime soon?
That's pretty much, you're nailing on the head the ideas that we've had around Icon, going back to our roots and reinforcing those and making sure that those are strong. Niching has pluses and minuses. You want a successful event, but you also want foot traffic. Niching, the South African community, geek community, is small.
Still too small.
It's small.
You have any idea when it might be big enough?
See, Comic-Con has an appeal that's large enough and broad enough for everybody. One of you mentioned before, one of the issues that you have, one of the issues that I had when I'm doing my business consulting type thing. If you tell somebody, are you a Game of Thrones fan? And they go, oh, I'm not a geek. Okay, but do you like Game of Thrones? Yes, I like Game of Thrones. Well, then actually you are a fantasy geek. You just don't know it.
Yeah.
Do you go and watch the Avengers movie? Yeah. Then you're a comic book geek. You just know it. Pippa Shabalala has a very nice point of view. Every single person is a gamer. Every person in the world is a gamer. They just need to find the right game. Once you find the right game, you will play that game. I mean, Candy Crush. How the hell does Candy Crush make billions and billions of dollars? How does Angry Birds make billions and billions of dollars? You've just got to find the right thing. And that's part of what Comic-Con can do. Comic-Con at scale can say, hey, come and try these things out. And because of Big Bang Theory, like a funny digression. A few years ago, I donated to the Kickstarter for Will Wheaton to help with his board game TV show. And the girlfriend and I donated to his Kickstarter, and the benefit that we got was that if we were at Gen Con in Indianapolis that year, we would be invited to lunch and play board games with Will Wheaton and his wife.
And
which was very cool. Yeah. So I call my mum in Australia, and we're having a chat, and she says, so what are you doing? I said, we're about to go over to Indianapolis. And she said, oh, what are you doing there? I said, well, I'm going to Gen Con, which is a convention, but I'm going to play board games with Will Wheaton. And she said, oh, that'll be lovely. Now, my mother was born in Tamworth in New South Wales. It's a country town. Think Ermelo type city. My mother is not a geek at all. And I said to her, Mum, how the hell do you know who Will Wheaton is? And she said, he's the guy that Sheldon doesn't like.
Sheldon's arch nemesis.
Yeah. Now, that means that people who are not geeks are watching Big Bang Theory and are being exposed to the comic shop. They're being exposed to the T-shirts that Sheldon wears. They're being exposed to all of these things. They may not think they're geeks, but a larger event like Comic-Con is a good opportunity for people to go in and experience these cultural things. And then to maybe be exposed to somebody like doing cosplay. So the niching is one thing, and there can be credit in making something for a specific audience. But the South African geek community, you couldn't run TwitchCon here. You couldn't run a YouTube convention here. It's not the scale is not correct. We might have 55, 60 million people here, but the subsets to drill down to your geek community, the numbers are not there. Plus, you also got to look at whether things will be too full. South African geeks cannot afford an event every 2 months. No. I don't think that South African geeks can afford 5 major events in a year.
No.
Because if you take away Christmas, so that's like November, December out. January, nothing's going to happen anyway. So now you're down to 9 months of the year. To put 4 major events in that space is then one every 2 months. You can have a smaller event, smaller niche events, absolutely. But the economies of scale is that you're going to need foot traffic for that. How do you make that viable? Going virtual could very well work. And then do it from a Patreon subscription tips model like you do on Twitch. But yeah, absolutely. So there's absolutely no problem with somebody coming in with the idea of running a niche event. The logistics around it and the ability to make it worthwhile and profitable is another thing entirely.
Yeah. Actually, it puts when you put it that way, it's like, it's really difficult. And the numbers just don't work out.
Yeah, and so it was the Geek of All Trades guys. I apologize. I ramble. I give a lot of.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting.
The Geek of All Trades guys are very kind enough to ask Vittorio and I each year to come back and do a prognostication podcast. So their December episode is us taking a look at the year ahead, making guesses, and we turn it into a competition. Whoever gets their predictions right or wrong gets points, and we look at it at the end of the year. And for the first couple of years, it was one of my things was about how many conventions there are in South Africa. So one stage, you had Icon, you had Rage, you had Rush, you had Geekfest, you had multiple Comic X's, you had Connex in Port Elizabeth, you had FanCon in Cape Town. You've got they run another one in FanCon through the university.
Yukon,
Yukon. So all of a sudden you start getting up to, and then there's the Medieval Fair. Then there's all of these sub-events. And the calendar was just getting full. And it was great for Artist Alley type people because they had a plethora of opportunities, but too much of that just is not sustainable. Now there's a couple of really, really big events throughout the course of the year. And when you're an Artist Alley person, you have the chance to promote to anywhere from 40 to 70,000 people. You're going to focus on that. So it changes, the dynamics. South Africa, unfortunately, a small country. It's got a smaller user base that's not very cash flush right now. So having, when you look at it from a year-long schedule, it tends to get a bit messy.
So in your spare time, what do you do when you're not in events or doing podcasts or laughing or anything like that? But before you answer the question,
she was put on that. Okay. So anyway, one of the guys that's constantly at your events, Ziad from Awali Comics. He's always at your events. He's now he's always at your events, but he was at your events. He's one of the comic book artists actually, and he was in Artist Alley. And he says he mentions here that he met the coolest interviewer at Icon through that time. Obviously, his name was Chris, and they became an industry friend, which is in his opinion quite awesome. I suppose we tend to agree with that. I mean, Icon's a lot of people.
Yeah.
It helped the SA Geeks get to where we are. Gave us that leg up.
You were one of our very first interviews.
Actually. So it was a big thing for us to start growing as a pair of content creators. So
it's nice that Icon does that.
Yeah, I think we send out a big thank you to you guys at Icon for actually giving show off, our skills, if you want to call it that.
That's right. So thank you very much for that comment. It's those sorts of things that make it worthwhile. When you hear that, hey, I made a connection through this. Now I'm doing something cool. Now I'm doing something awesome, and moving on. That's a very cool thing. It warms my heart. Thank you.
If you were crying, none of you would ever know. Like pixelated, you'll just have a pixelated tear.
Can we put that in post, please? Just make me,
of course. Yeah.
Make me not a robot. Make me cry.
I've got some stock images of tears I can use.
Oh, nice.
You can, yeah. Unfortunately, live on Twitch, we can't do much post. There's no such thing as post. Yeah, so and everyone's going to see it because it's saved in.
Well, this is.
So what do you do in your spare time when you're not running around like a maniac, organizing events, doing
I don't chill a lot. I wear multiple hats, and I consume a lot of media, like a lot. Whenever I'm sitting down and working, I will have on my second monitor maybe like CNN streaming. I'll have other news sources streaming, something going on, listening and consuming a lot of content. Where I am from a workspace is I like being able to jump from project to project. I find it very difficult, the idea of going back to work for a boss. So I have multiple projects on the go. There is and I apologize, I can't tell you any more about it, but there's a project that we put forward to a major movie studio that looks like it's getting some big traction. And if that happens, then that's and it has to do with a superhero character. And if that comes off, then that's going to be a focus. And yeah, I've got multiple hats. So when I take one hat off, there's generally an opportunity for another hat to come on. So I try to make.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I try to make the things that I do fun and enjoyable. So downtime is the opportunity to do more fun and enjoyable things.
Yeah. So that's how you like avoid burnout. Essentially, you just keep changing stuff so it's always fun.
Oh yeah, about maybe once a month, I'll take a night where it's like, no, cool, I'm gonna go sleep now and sleep for 12. I sleep less than 6 hours a night. It's just the way that I am. So I'll go to bed past midnight, be up around 6ish, and then get up. And it's the consumption of media, the consumption of what's going on in the world. How are these things affecting everything else? I love the interconnectedness of things and how things play on from one thing to another. Which helps when I go into consulting, that I can find hooks to relate things to. It makes it a lot easier. So I enjoy that, and I rarely get I won't take a day off to watch the cricket. I'll have the cricket on the TV while I'm doing something else.
Right.
What is one thing that not many people anyway?
Well, so this comes back to the hair. At one stage, I had hair 3/4 of the way down my back. I had long hair. Oof. The problem is that I also had the circular beard. I should just call it a bokkie. It's not a bokkie. It's a circular beard. So I had the circular beard and I had the hair, and I'm a big guy. I looked like the Cowardly Lion. And yeah. So there was one point for a few years I just grew it out, and then I went, no, I'm getting my hair cut. So I got it trimmed to like a proper haircut, and that lasted 2 days, and I went, no, shave it. And I have shaved ever since. I've never let it go longer than a couple of weeks without clippers or a shave, and COVID-19's killing me. I'm about to get a... Sorry?
I take my own hair off.
I used to have clippers, and then there's just near where I live, there's a small barbershop. There was an Egyptian guy that ran it, and he would do hot towel shaves. And
straight razor to your head.
And he did it for $120. It was 120 rand. He was professional. It was hot towel. You know what? I can spare $120 once every 2 weeks to go and support somebody to do this.
Yeah.
And now it's the guys. There was a change of ownership. The guys, I walk in there now, and they don't do the hot towel, but they make sure that everything's done correctly. So I'll sit there and I close my eyes, don't sleep. I just close my eyes. I let them do their thing, and that's $70. So now I just give them the 100 and give them that tip, and that's something I do every 2 weeks. So it's 30 minutes in, done. I'm supporting somebody else. I mean, I could do it myself. It'd take half an hour to an hour anyway. So rather just let these guys do it.
Okay, makes sense. We don't have that kind of stuff here. I've never come across it, and also I'm pretty sure they're quite expensive here.
Yeah, well, the UK is a different breed.
Yeah, we're probably looking at about £14 for a shave or something like that. No, I wouldn't be able to do that.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
That's a bit mad.
So I'll just do it myself.
So Awali again says that Icon was also amazing because he didn't expect us to be there and he got an interview. But Icon is amazing all the same. It helped him to meet people that he will know for many years. And also on your consumption of media, he says, I often find myself trying to work and consume media. If done right, it's one of the benefits to working at home.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, it's it's almost bad that I'm using my headphones right now. That the moment I step away from my desk to like go into the kitchen or do something, the headphones go into the phone, and I will watch MSNBC on my phone or leave it in my pocket while I'm doing something else. So I'm listening to the news, I'm listening to a podcast, I'm listening to something. It's one of the benefits. And to Yanis's point from earlier, niche. You can find the thing that you like, and however bizarre, however vanilla, however mainstream it might be, you can find never been more opportunities in the world for people to make content or for people to find the content that they want to consume and consume it. And that's where I am now. My biggest problem is I keep looking at the math of how many hours I've got in a week, and I like 30 different podcasts, and they all have an hour a week. So sometimes you just want to appreciate something. Yeah. Sometimes you just need the background noise.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to cut down. I think at one point I cut down all the way down to just Joe Rogan, and that's just like the educational Joe Rogan.
Yeah. Now, and Joe Rogan, sometimes that will go for 2 hours.
3 hours sometimes.
Yeah. How are you supposed to pay attention to 3 hours in your day while you've got other things to do? And that's just one show.
Yeah, just the one show. What else do we have from this?
One of the things we wanted to make sure of with Release the Geek is Release the Geek's origin was because I had a 45 minutes to an hour every day in traffic to and then from work. So it was like an hour and a half to 2 hours where I could listen to the radio, yay Highfelt, yay 5FM, yay Wakaranda, yay whatever, or I could download the stuff that I wanted to listen to on my phone and do it. So the model for Release the Geek was always something you could consume in a trip to work. So we try to be about 1 hour that you might listen to it and then maybe listen to a little bit on the way home. We try to aim for an hour, but if the conversation's good, then I'm going to let it go.
Yeah. Like this one.
Thank you. Very kind.
Right, so here's another weird one for you. Have people ever asked you for free event tickets? And if so, what is the silliest reason they've ever given?
Okay, for Icon, no. For Icon, no. If people come to me with a request for tickets, it's usually for a good reason. It's usually for a good reason. Like we've had... last year at Icon, we had a young gent with severe health issues that we found out about. So turns out he was a big Green Lantern fan. So unbeknownst to his parents, so it was a friend of the family that got us in touch and said, look, this kid may not have much longer. He really likes these things. Can you do something special for him? So we organized him to meet Sean Isaacs, Jason Masters, Ron Mars, and Ron signed a Green Lantern comic that Ron had written and handed to the kid. And that was, look, here are the tickets, come in, just enjoy yourself. We generally don't just have chances. Somebody who comes in and says, just give me free tickets. People will generally have a reason for it. One thing that we will be looking at a bit more closely is media. That we have a lot of content creators who are asking for tickets, but then we find that there's not necessarily content that they're posting around that. Like they get the ticket, but we haven't seen anything from... Now, the SA Geeks have been fantastic. We've seen that the interviews you guys did with Vampy and with Raymond and from Icon, where you got to chat to Ron, etc. We've seen those, but there have been a couple of others who was like, okay, I'm a blogger, and we've checked afterwards, and there hasn't been a single bit of content that's been generated from the event. So it's like, well, even just a blog would have been great. That's why. But so we're going to potentially tighten that a bit up.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's not cool. I mean, we understand. And obviously with us, sometimes the event posts, only because we have we're not the richest content creators in the world. So.
We have technical issues, but it takes a while, but eventually.
We always get them out though. We always get them out.
Within the next fiscal year, we will get the content out.
You know what? As long as it's before the opening of applications for the next event.
Yeah. There's recently, I think it was the last hiccup because my computer just decided to bomb on me. Graphics card, motherboard, CPU, hard drives, everything decided to stop. So that was the reason why our content was not very good.
The content.
That's fine.
I'm sitting there waiting. I'll get to it, I promise.
Even me. I don't think I posted anything from Rage. I need to edit all of that stuff.
I'm sitting on two pieces of content that from Comic-Con that I haven't it's just not been the right time. We got to interview Nolan North and Troy Baker.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Nice, yeah.
So I got 7 minutes of content, which is gold because the guys were great.
Yeah.
And it's just not been missed my window directly after Comic-Con. So it's all right, cool. How can I drop it to leverage it? Maybe look at New York Comic-Con where they make the Avengers announcement about Kamala Khan, etc. It just hasn't been the right time. But I need to get over that and just put it out.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Go Nike.
Indeed.
Actually, it would be suited if we said that name.
What is... no. Who is your most favorite person that you have met in the geek industry and why?
Why must you put the man on the spot like this? Why?
I can't.
Kids likes to see people squirm with this question.
I can't. It's okay. It's really, really tough to pick one. It's really tough to pick one, and I apologize. I hate sometimes sharing a lot of this stuff in that it makes it sound like I'm showing off. I've just been really, really lucky with how I've managed to do certain things. So, like Raymond Feist. Ray, so I met Ray here in South Africa at a book signing and said, look, I've just started this podcast. Would you do it? And he said, well, I'm actually flying out tomorrow, so no. But if you're ever in San Diego, let me know. So he gave me his card. And it just so happened that 3 months later, myself and Vittorio were in Los Angeles. And I dropped him out. Now, San Diego is a 2-hour drive down the coast. Down the one from LA down. Said, all right, Vic, we're going to rent a car. We're going to drive down to San Diego. We're going to interview Raymond Feist. Right. This is the guy that got me into fantasy. I devoured his books. I devoured these characters. And now I was going to sit down and spend some time talking to the guy. And during that, we talked about Australian rules football because he's a fan. We met at a hotel, in the foyer of a hotel. He walked in with a Springbok jersey on, just to make sure we knew it was him. I mean, yeah. And we did this entire interview, and it was great. And at the end of it, he said, well, I'm hungry. Do you want lunch? It's like, yeah. Go back and listen to that interview. At the end of it, we stopped and had burgers. Now I'm eating burgers with the guy. And now it's... And there have been multiple interactions like that where I've met somebody that I'm a fan of, and we just had great conversations. But probably number one would be Rob Salkowitz. So Rob has been a guest on the podcast a couple of times. He was a guest at Icon last year. He's an industry guy. He wrote a book about the business of Comic-Con and pop culture. Now, we flew him out as a guest to Icon last year. We took him and his wife out to Kruger National Park. Afterwards, they had an amazing time. When I go to a convention and Rob's there, then it's, hey, Les, you need to meet so-and-so. You need to meet so-and-so. You need to meet so-and-so. That people locally think I might be well connected, that I know a guy or know a guy or know a girl and make these connections. Rob's at another level. At another level. I have met people in the industry because of Rob going, oh, Les runs a convention in South Africa. Here's Ted Adams, the guy behind some of the biggest... he's a comic book publisher. IDW. Yeah, so Ted Adams started IDW. Hey, Les, here's Ted. Ted's a friend. Say hi. And we had a drink. And then it's, oh, here's so-and-so. Oh, here's so-and-so. Yeah, he's a guy that I'm incredibly fortunate to know, but he's also very generous with his connections as well.
That's really awesome. So Ziad has asked a question. Featured creator, comma, an announced creator. I'm assuming that he meant or an announced.
Sorry. Can I just get you to repeat that? It just broke up a little bit. Is that?
Okay. Well, Ziad says, what does it take to become a featured creator, comma, an announced creator? I think he might have meant back.
Oh, to be an announced guest.
I think so.
Okay, I think that's kind of where they might be going. Generally, it involves being on a panel. If they're on a panel, then they're going to be in the panel schedule. Then we need to create a profile for that person so that they would be declared a guest. Somebody who is there as an Artist Alley person is a vendor. Technically, well, no, not even technically. They are a vendor, so they're not necessarily a guest because anybody can be a vendor. To be an announced person would be a panel. There's no problem submitting panel ideas. If you've got something out and you say, "Look, I would like an opportunity to showcase," generally we'll find a panel. We've done that with Sarah Blue Publishing multiple times. They've done a lot of writers' workshops. They said, Les, we've got a new book coming. Can we promote the author there? Absolutely. We'll find a spot. That's the difference between somebody who attends as a vendor and somebody who can become an announced guest. I hope that helps.
Shout out to Sarah Blue. I dig those guys there.
Whoa! Holy crap, dude. What happened to your voice?
What happened?
You've gone full Barry White. No, you are coming through loud and clear and deep, my son.
Moving to.
How about now?
No, you're not coming through at all.
No, I'm done.
Technical difficulty.
It's at the end of this. It's at the end of this.
I think it's time to end the stream.
The SA Geeks and Geek-Inspired Podcast never fail to disappoint. It's not a jinx. I think that we should. We're just like another podcast. Now we're the Technical Difficulties Geek-Inspired Podcast.
Like I said, these are always the things that you remember. I've had multiple podcasts. I've had multiple podcasts go extremely well, but the ones where there was a difficulty, like we interviewed Dave DeBerg at a Mug and Bean in Pretoria, but we were right next to the coffee machine.
Oh dear.
So I had to tell my sound guy, I'm so sorry, but this was the best that we could do. Okay, cool. When there's an issue that's overcome, that's when the cool stories happen, and that's what makes the better memories. You'll remember the days of the technical difficulties, and that's then an in-joke to people who are watching. Hey, remember the days of the technical issue?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Just reading.
Sorry, we're just reading. He says, okay, that's awesome. And would likely want to be part of that.
Sure.
Especially with the fact that he has ideas rolling around to work with Sarah Blue on something. Nothing solid yet, though. But they are his number one choice for publishing.
Excellent.
So,
excellent. We've done very cool things with Sarah Blue. At 2016 Icon, Sarah Blue's first main competition, that if you bought a copy of their book Crimson Skies, you could submit a story idea and they would publish it. They picked the winner to publish, and that was Jason. Jason's story, Her Immaculate, he was the winner of the competition. So in 2017 there was another panel about that process, and we had Jason as a guest on the podcast as well. So if you've got an idea for a panel, now when it's it doesn't have to be self-promotion of your work. You could think up a panel going, how do I get into podcasting? So it's a technical panel. How do I get into writing? It's a technical panel. You could look to share information rather than self-promote. At the end of the panel, you can definitely self-promote. That's not a problem. But look to provide an informative panel first.
Yeah, that's so true. You know, that was something that Kez and I were actually wanting to. I think we discussed it with you. Yeah, we discussed it.
No, I'm saying we'll discuss it after.
But we will discuss afterwards as well about it. But you viewers will just have to figure it out. So it's as simple as that.
What's that?
Sorry, that it's just broken up there.
Is there anything else? We've covered pretty much all the questions.
I think I'm pretty happy. It's been really fun talking to Les. He's very clued up, and I probably could talk to him for another 5 hours, but I'm dying here because it's really hot.
Oh no! Turn your fan on. You turned your fan on.
I
it's
did.
on.
I did.
It is on. Okay.
Yeah.
Les, anything else from your side?
No, thank you so much for asking me to be a guest. I very much appreciate it. It's it's I don't often think about being on the other side of the interview.
Yeah. Well, now it's time for you to punt your.
No, we're not finished.
Oh wait, we're not finished.
Video.
Oh right, we have to. There's a featured video that we promised all the fans, and Les, you get to see it for the first time as well.
Excellent.
We promised you guys a video from us at Swadesh.
Yeah, after Rage.
After Rage, just before obviously Les and myself Scotland, we we recorded a whole video, and Tunes has edited it somewhat.
It's not fully edited.
It's not fully edited yet, but
still a work in progress.
It's still quite funny. It's Tunes as Jonathan, Pregan, Vish, and Zaid having bunny chow at Swadesh.
Yeah.
Can you guys view it on the YouTube stream? Because it'll be easy for me to do it through there.
I don't know, can we overlay it?
I don't know.
You want to go and see if you can overlay it?
Yeah.
I'll sit and entertain the people.
Chat to it.
Yes. But, okay, so it looks like what you do, Angel, they're trying to beam to each other now. So
punch yourself, Les.
Yes, Les, punch your channel while we're sorted.
Probably the main thing would be Release the Geek, releasethegeek.net. We host 2 podcasts there. One is Release the Geek. Last week we dropped a panel from Icon 2018 with Jason Masters, where Jason, Johannesburg-based artist, is currently killing it on Captain America. he was selected by Warren Ellis to draw James Bond and was approved by the James Bond estate. So Jason's an amazing artist, and he did a panel at Icon 2018 where he took Warren Ellis's script and he showed us how he did the script and converted it to the artwork. So it's storytelling and pictures. That was the episode we dropped last week. There's an episode with Donnie Cates there. We've got a couple of cosplayers, Annalise Kent. So all 150 episodes, 150 plus episodes of Release the Geek are there. You'll also find Vittorio Leonardi's podcast on urbane myths. He's a very big urban myths fan. So he's been going through some of South Africa's more well-known urban myths, speaking to a couple of urban myth identities. You can find those episodes there as well. So that's releasethegeek.net. You can follow us on Twitter, GXPZA, and GeekXP on Facebook.
There you go. Anywhere else? You're not on Twitch or anything, are you?
I am not on Twitch. I do not think anybody needs to watch me do anything live.
Except this. Yeah.
Except this, but this is you guys. This is not me.
This you have no choice. You're on live.
This I have no choice.
It's like he's just trying to start the video at the moment.
Do you want to post the link, the YouTube link in here in Discord so I can grab that?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, we'll drop that in the Discord. No, we don't know how to do it. We don't know how to do the video on.
Okay.
Can't do it on your end. Then just view it. You'll have to view it through the YouTube stream, and then my OBS will switch over to the video, and then we can watch it. So you guys give commentary on this stream while the YouTube stream shows the video. I think that's the only way we can actually do that.
See it?
Yeah, it's gonna come up on history.
Oh, it's gonna come up in history. You can have the commentary then, Andrew. You're gonna have to do right. This is the fun part.
The interesting. This is the director's cut. Well, not yet. The raw cut.
Oh shit! That's what it does. Watch.
Okay, are we ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
Yeah, we're ready.
Okay, I'm gonna switch the scene over. Might take a few seconds.
Hey, what's up, you guys? Okay, so here we are at Swadish in Northgate, and here with some family members. As you can look at on real quick. Lots of faces of friends. We got Giannis, coming from Ross. This gentleman okay, fine, some defense, yes. Okay, then it's me and Bish. What we're doing right now is witnessing them read an article, and then of course we have a bunny challenge. But don't look at mine, look at Pagans. They don't go with eyes on my food. Don't put eyes on my food. They're doing the bunny challenge. Is this bunny going to defeat us, or are we going to defeat the bunny? I think it was the proper way of how to chow, but I was very, very offended to see Jonas start pointing at Bunny University. Yeah, Bunny Chow University 101 now, right? So the first thing I did, put that thing in. You don't fuck it up. It fucks you up. This is the correct way, right? Some people
I'm looking at the video. What was this called?
No, I'm going to teach you high grade. You're going to take 3 fingers, right? Because that's where the movement is here. This is not like this. It's like this. The movement is here. And this here acts as a buffer. Because the worst thing is if you eat like this, and the carrot gets stuck here, if you suck your hand and then you don't want that. So you keep a buffer like this.
When we had Vampy,
Don't look at your hand. Point at your hand. Right. So you're going to bake like this.
They fell in love with Bunny Chow.
Bake like this. You get some carrot salad like this. You're going to get some some aloo, some potato like this. You're going to open the hatch. You're going to pop it inside. You're going to chew that mouthful. And you're going to do it again. That's fine. I'm not gonna lie. There's some valves that were opened over here. Right, the 1, 2 valves got open. You're such a liar. So Jonah, how did you find it? Come again.
He has a problem with the hotness.
I'm proud of you. Proof Yeah.
And he used his hands, guys.
Yeah.
All of them use their hands.
Just try the plates again. Say it's gone. It's gone.
Plates are gone.
You know, I was here. Awesome chow. So the challenge initially was, where does this stack up against a Durban bunny?
and
I asked our not so impartial judge, Janus. Say hello about your names.
Love butter chicken.
My name is Janus. So how's the bunny?
I think we had it was good. It's better than eating bunnies, I can tell you that much. Right? But it's not better than Durban bunny, I'm sorry. It's not hot enough. And if you're going to give me a bunny, you need to give me the
Janus,
end of the bunny.
next time when I head down to Durban, I'm going to let you know. I would like to take you here
Solid
so that I could eat this food.
But it was a top bunny.
No, I'm gonna give it slightly higher. I'm gonna go maybe 7.5, 8.5. I don't want to go higher than that because people are gonna judge me, you know. They're gonna ask me for reasons. So, but what I can say is that look, I have like a 4-hour drive being ahead, and I feel safe and secure to fasten my seatbelt because we're not gonna be blasting off. That's something I'm grateful for.
Yeah, you're moving with the let's chemical watches, right?
Burn up on re-entry and that. But I'm gonna ask Ross then.
Okay, well, this is my first time having bunny chow.
In your whole damn life? In your whole damn life? Wait, 1 second. With Ross, what was that?
I have never had bunny chow in my entire damn life.
Your whole damn life?
See it, right?
Yes, but for my first time, but granted, we didn't have like the murderously hot ones like you guys had, but we had butter chicken, but like really mild butter chicken. So it was slightly spicy.
Into Charo tunes.
What's that? I actually really enjoyed it.
We're gonna end the night off with some soji.
That's the running joke. Like I made all the Charo tunes like
It's kind of like a
English.
different.
Yeah, I've never had this.
You've never had soji in your life.
No, this. You've never had soju in your whole damn life. Soju in my life, but not like this artisanal soju. This is some like chef level shit, bro.
You can feel the heat.
Look at that texture. Look at that.
All of us have never eaten soju like that before.
And
Tastes like sweet.
Melva.
It's not chats with wailing soji, but it's okay.
It's artisanal soju.
Artisanal soji.
Look at those textures, man.
They use my granny's mold to actually make the mold of this. Yeah, Marty used your See, because it's artisanal soju, you gotta eat it in an artisanal stack. That's how you gotta have it. And you must smell it first.
What do you mean?
You said this.
It's not usually like molded like that. It's
Like it's come out of a plastic container.
yeah.
You know, get burned.
Soju is not usually that.
Not
old.
caro hot. Not tipta hot. Just like hot, you know?
Like heat hot.
Like heat hot, yeah.
What was with the pinky with the spoon there? Just delicately.
Last
moving-
question.
What was that?
Because if you're eating artisanal soju, you need to do it in a delicate. You need to eat it in an artisanal way.
Had I been a little more arrogant, I would have said sometimes it's out of a Bombay. But that's just me. I actually don't know. We'll hand it over to my friend Radio.
When will this be
I'll
made
tell
live?
you until you ask.
Probably in a week. I still got a lot of fancy editing to do. That confused me. I don't know what you were talking about. Only afterwards I got it.
What is a Bombay duck?
I'm going to guess it's an explosively spicy duck dish.
Okay.
I'm gonna let Jonas over here tell you guys at home what it is. because I won't have the courage to say it on camera. And because he's from the motherland, Chatsworth.
So good.
You know your mother is cooking Bombay Crush. When you come home, Bombay duck. Bombay Crush is a different thing. Bombay Crush is a different.
But we'll leave that for another episode.
Yeah, President was saying people thought we were like famous
Two
people.
roads away, you can tell.
Because we took over the restaurant.
Because that shit stinks.
Famous Indian actors, they're white producers.
Yeah, we just like Bollywood
Right.
at the place. Huh?
Don't die on me. Zayn is dying.
Zayn almost died.
I'm okay.
Bombay duck kills people.
Some water. Will you do for Comic Con next year? Blah. He relaxed. As you were saying, sir.
As I was saying, right, your mother probably made a bit of rice. She made a tomato chutney. We just call it chutney. Because if you cook fruit, it's
hilarious.
chutney, right? To get technical. And then she also made this salty, very, very, I would say, cured fish.
That was the day.
Bombay duck. Bonus question, Ross.
Yeah.
If I ask you if there's a jack in the boot, what do you think I'm referring to?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Oh, I hit you with a jack in the
If I
boot.
ask you if you've got a jack in the boot, what am I referring to?
Oh, yeah.
First thing I'm going to think of is, well, I've
There's a
got
jack in the boot.
Well, you're gonna find out now.
Let's put it to John. John, it's not the perfect name for it too. Hey, Uncle John, you got a jack in the boot. In your own words.
Oh, you. I went the more root of the car kind of.
That, normally, yeah, but in Chatsworth, that's not what he means.
Would you like to call it? Here's the friend. She's got something in her mouth.
The literal approach, I like that.
The literal price.
Dragon. What is a jack in the boot? A jack in the boot is technically
The Jack in the.
a very strong alcoholic drink that is kept in. What you mean? Jack Daniels, bruh?
Jack Daniels.
Preferably Jack Daniels, a very strong alcoholic drink. Let's be honest. How many times you all had cheap uncles and aunties that had you and it ended up being bad 69 years.
I drink that 69. I don't drink it when it's been in the sun for hours, but I drink it.
That explains a lot. At this point, I would like to say the premium does not represent
Indian people in
use
Chatsworth
of the
have
rest
like
of us.
pumpkins
Yeah.
and berries and
What? How about this? How about I get you a couple of
there'll always
skyscrapers?
be that one
No,
uncle
that is all the
goes
time
to
we
his
have
car,
for right now.
opens the boot,
Now I'm gonna go
has
back.
his paper cups and the Jack Daniels and pours it out for everybody. It's
Couple of gentlemen, Indian gentlemen I worked with at Paston. There was a bottle of Jameson and the styrofoam cups permanently in the boot.
yeah.
I love that end off though. It was quite funny.
It was funny. Like Zay just shut you down. It was hilarious.
I'm gonna shoot you with some Scottish questions. Oh shit! You like the Scots?
All right. So did Les tell us where we can find him on the internet and stuff?
He did. He said it while we were
Alright.
trying to get the whole video going.
Well, you can find me at Geekoscopy. It's right here.
Yeah, there. You can find our Tuesday where he at Geekoscopy everywhere. That's relevant.
Find us as the SA Geeks. Just look for that pretty purple logo.
Yeah, you can see the pretty purple logo at the bottom of the screen. Look for that. Look for Geekoscopy the same way. You know how it works, guys. Come on.
Google, man. Use
Social
Google.
media, everyone knows.
Use Google.
Right?
Google is your friend.
Yeah, Google.
Yeah, Google is your friend. Exactly. Just type in the big S, big A, big G.
Big G.
That was a good one.
What can I say? I'm a pro at this.
And
Anyway,
you can
guys.
type in GeekXP, you can type in Geekoscopy, you can type in everything.
You can type in Geekoscopy.
Geekoscopy.
But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching us this afternoon. For us, like the light is out there. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for watching us. We do appreciate it as always. You know how it works. It's just the way it goes. It's nice to actually have you guys watching us, asking
Thank you
questions.
for joining
Les,
us.
thank you so much for. Really,
Thank you.
It's been real. Huh? It's been real.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very,
Very
very much
cool
for the
chat.
invitation. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and even though we live in South Africa, I've still got
You just cut out. We can't hear anything.
Yeah.
It was just blank.
That's it.
Let's try that again. Even though we live in Scotland, I still have a South African accent, huh?
That's it, huh? That's it, huh? Yeah.
Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. And as always, remember, keep it geeky. Bye! I'm going to wave like this until Kes closes the stream.
I'll do my patented thumbs up.
Pretend you're frozen.